Are you there? Are you there? Okay. Check the light and everything. Okay, yes, your background. Yes, your hair. Your hair. What are you tying? What are you tying on your hair? you see me? Oh, where is my... How do I look? Okay. Usual, text, and when the session starts, when the other people start their session, you will take the leading of the last guy before you take questions. So be proactive. You don't have to be telling you about questions from the beginning. Yes, like the last speaker before you, his name is John Larson. You are the one to say that at your intro. Yes. Okay, let's talk later. Everybody? Yeah? Did you send the... Ask your question? But hello, I'm about to start the meeting. Okay. I'm about to start the meeting. Yes. Yes. I'm starting the meeting in 4 minutes, and I won't be able to talk to you when it starts. Okay, 309954. Thank you. Bye. Ms. Ugo is to start immediately. Is your time late?
Okay.
It's 1 minute past time, Ms. Ugo.
Thank you very much. The keynote presenter, all other presenters, my Lord, the Chief Justice of Sierra Leone, my Lords, Justices of the Supreme Court, Justices of the Courts of Appeal, and all other judges, senior advocates, professors, senior lawyers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the third edition of the Courts and Society webinar series with the topic, the impact of judicial education in developing law and society. Just a brief housekeeping rule before I go on. Kindly drop your questions and comments in the comment section. We will read them when the time comes. Now, may I introduce the founder and the CEO of A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting, Your Honor, a former magistrate in Lagos State, Nigeria, who served for 12 years in three of the busiest magisterial districts in the state. She graduated from Benue State University, Makurdi, and obtained a master's degree from the University of Lagos State, all in Nigeria. Your Honor also earned a master's degree in judicial studies and a PhD in judicial studies from the University of Nevada, Reno. You can get one research university in the United States. The Journal of Blacks in Higher Education recognized her as the first Black woman to earn a PhD in judicial studies in the United States. She's been researching on courts and society for over a decade. I now present to you the convener of this Courts and Society webinar series, which is the first of its kind, Your Honor, Ari Toby Ayemo. Thank you.
Thank you, Ugo. Good morning, different time zones, good afternoon, good evening. My Lord, the Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Honorable Justice Babatunde Edwards. My Lord, as I see on the attendance, Honorable, the keynote speaker, I beg your pardon, my Lord, Honorable Justice Abib Adewale Abiru of the Justice Court of Appeal, Nigeria. I saw my Lord Justice Coker earlier, other presenters, Justice of the Supreme Court here present, because I'm not, it's not obvious on your name, so I observe all due protocols. Thank you all for joining us, especially those who have started from the first, second, and now the third. We appreciate you. A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting has been very, very impressed and encouraged by the attendance and the support that we have had in various respects.
No, can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. So a brief history of the Courts and Society webinar series is important before I introduce the Chief Justice to give us his greetings. We appreciate you, sir, for taking the time to want to greet us. Please, can you mute your mic, please? I'm sorry, it's coming from Milot, thank you. So the Court and Society webinar series started as a whole a long time ago, like Ugo said, over 19 years research before I became a lawyer, and while I became a lawyer and then a magistrate, and everything just somehow fell in place. But I would not bore you with all of that now so that we can go into our discussion, as a lot of discussions bother on education in diverse respects, and a lot of people are interested in asking their questions. So the Court and Society webinar series originally is a concept that started from Nigeria. And as the great Nigerian judiciary has been instrumental in shaping my thoughts, my enthusiasm towards understanding and researching on why court or the law is kind of, there's a gap between courts and the law and society. Why some people don't understand why judges take certain decisions, and all they say is, oh, that judge took a bribe. Oh, this judge doesn't know the law, when they know little or nothing about the procedures of law. And unfortunately, rather unfortunately, even some lawyers don't even understand what it means to be a judge. So there's a lot of gap between the law and courts and society. So that got me into researching on that, and I started to work in an NGO with people in the local community, getting to understand more of what people think and how they see courts. And most of my pro bono representation of them as litigants in court were in courts of appeal and magistrate courts and the High Court. And eventually that instigated and inspired me to say, no, I believe I would make better change from the bench. So I applied, and luckily blessed, and I got into the Magistrate Court of Lagos State, where I served, like Ugo said. And then took some time to come out further, inquisitive, to the United States, where I got my master's and PhD. And there, eventually, I formed and registered the company A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting. Now, A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting is a name that came up from a theory that I propounded in the course of my dissertation. That theory is called socio-judicialism. And it was me trying to understand how justice can apply social and judicial empathy. So far, on the record of the University of Reno, Nevada, from an email that I got from the research librarian, there is no such theory as socio-judicialism connecting to my area of research. So I, with all sense of humility and thanks to God, claim that theory as I claim to be I claim that theory as mine, and having propounded that theory for judicial development. So the first assignment of A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting was then to understand from the inside what it means to be a judge, the role of a judge in society, the connection between judges and society. And there was no other that I could use as an example than someone that I knew over 40 years of my life, who I saw inside and outside the courtroom on a professional, on a personal level, in his strengths, in his weaknesses, and all of that. A man who many knew as tough, a man who many knew as kind, a man who many knew as firm, who was very intimidating, intelligent, outspoken, and very philosophical. A man I knew and would always know as my father. My late father, Honorable Justice Nikki Toby, inspired my interest in law and in justice and human rights. And from his life and various judgments that he gave, I saw the connection between courts and society, how a judge can be firm, judicial, follow precedents, and still be society-oriented, culture-driven, and empathic. And the first symposium of its kind, international symposium, was in that respect, where diverse judges, professors, students from across the globe attended, across the world, attended to discuss what I termed the impact, Honorable Justice Nikki Toby's impact on the development of law and society. Now, using him as a name for representing all other judges. What is the role of the court in impacting courts and society? Basically, that is in the sum of what A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting is focusing on these seminars. So 4 sessions of that symposium, we decided to break down into 4 webinars this year. The symposium was last year, so the first session was on courts and society, that's the impact of courts, the impact of precedents on developing law and society. After that, we had the courts as agents of social change. And the third one now is courts, how judicial education impacts courts, development of law and society. Our goals and objectives is to build public confidence in our court systems and in our judges, to enlighten society about the courts by explaining the value and the role of courts in society. We are hoping that with your contributions, your intellectual researches and diverse questions, comments, which already we have noted, would revamp judicial thinking to be more society-oriented. So we also wish to discuss common contemporary issues that affect judicial systems in Asia, Europe, Australia, if we get anybody from Antarctica. So far on registration, we have had all continents except Antarctica. And we're hoping that everyone, keynote speakers, discussants, attendees, will come up with solutions that will ultimately benefit society and democratic development in different societies, in different judicial systems. We also hope to facilitate and foster intellectual, scholastic, legal, and judicial relationships, where judges from Sierra Leone would meet judges from the United States, judges from the United States would meet judges in India, and we would connect on diverse respects to exchange ideas and support the advancement of judicial systems. It is true that we, as developed countries, have a lot to learn, as developing countries in Africa and other parts, have a lot to learn from developed countries like the United States. However, I have related on certain respects, and I also believe that there are many aspects of our judicial system that the developed countries like United States can also learn from. You know, sometimes when you are put with little or nothing to make justice work, our judges have a way of coming up with principles and that would show the tenacity and the zeal and the intelligence of the African judge. So basically, this is also about that, where we relate with one another and learn from one another and advance our judicial systems. We also want to celebrate and advance judicial jurisprudence, fundamental, because every time the judge is one of the professions, the career in the judiciary is one of the professions where no one really understands what you do and you're not appreciated as much. So this is a platform to also appreciate and celebrate judicial jurisprudence in various jurisdictions, various judges, what they say, how they say it, and what led to their saying it, the decisions that they make and how they think, their philosophies, and how this has impacted and still is impacting society. We also wish to inspire and further research fundamentally. So as we are presenting, any one of you attendees, any one of the judges can pick up an aspect of the presentation, and of course, citing it, develop on it and write your opinion on what you think the position of the law or society should be to develop judicial jurisprudence in diverse respect. And ultimately, we wish to celebrate culture. So thank you all for coming. This next session is to introduce the Chief Justice, the Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of Sierra Leone. Now, normally when you have someone so important to grace your occasion, someone so busy to grace your occasion, and it is important that you sing the national anthem. But my Lord Chief Justice, I would please crave on your indulgence that we would not be able to do that because I do not want to offend anybody with the issues of protocol. I was searching all over the internet and I called a couple of protocol people in government to ask, so what do I do where we are in a webinar and you do not know the number of justices of the Supreme Court that will be attending, and you don't want to have to tell anybody to get up when you have not taken leave of court. So, you don't know what cultural issues some of them may have, and you don't want to offend anybody. So I decided that, okay, we will not be standing up, neither will we be singing the national anthem, but in honor of the Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of Sierra Leone, we hail the national anthem. The high we exalt thee, realm of the free, national anthem of the Republic of Sierra Leone. Thank you, my Lord Chief Justice, for being here. A brief about the Chief Justice of Sierra Leone. Honorable Chief Justice Desmond Babatunde Edwards rose through the judicial ranks to be the #1 judge in Sierra Leone. He was a judge of Sierra Leone's High Court in 2006. He served as judge of the High Court's Commercial and Admiralty Division. He served as a High Court judge in charge of civil and criminal matters, and also as a resident High Court judge for the Southern Province. Then Justice Edwards, Honorable Chief Justice Edwards, I beg your pardon, then Honorable Chief Justice Edwards went on to the Court of Appeal in 2015, and then became Chief Justice of Sierra Leone in 2018. Before he was appointed a judge, Chief Justice Edwards was in private practice and lecturing in Sierra Leone's Law School and Liscar Business College. Honorable Chief Justice Edwards served as the head of the litigation unit for Sierra Leone's National Social Security and Insurance Trust, NASIT. In addition to his administrative role, Honorable Chief Justice Edwards was sworn in as a Justice of the Residual Special Court for Sierra Leone on 1st December 2016. My Lord, Honorable Chief Justice, thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
My Lords, Justices of all the courts, all protocols observed, Madam Convener of this webinar, it's a pleasure to be with you at this forum, to be talking this morning or afternoon, as the case may be. The direction I got from you was not to make any longish or long statement or anything. It was just to say 1 or 2 words, and I am going to stick to that limit.
My Lord, please take whatever time you want.
I am going to stick within the remit, the original remit. I will not speak long. The topic under consideration is how judicial education impacts law and development. But before delving into that, I must commend you on what you are doing. I think it's good. It's good for us to be discussing these things, talking about these things, because the more we discuss, the more we talk about these things, the more we learn about these things, and the more we are in a position to make greater impact as we move forward. Having said that, coming to the topic at hand, judicial education. What is judicial education? For me, what is judicial education is not the normal thing that you say judges should have degrees, they should have qualifications, etc. Judicial education goes beyond normal qualifications. It goes beyond normal experience. It is continuing professional development. I want to narrow it down to continuing professional development. You are on the job and then you are being educated as you move forward. And it's not just casual education, it is formal education. The judiciary may have what they call Judicial Legal Training Institute that would facilitate judges being trained on specific issues, judges meeting with their peers, learning from their peers, and being able to put what they learn into practice. It is very, very much an important area. And it is such an area that if any judiciary should neglect that, that judiciary will not move forward. Because the things that come up on day-to-day basis is not everything that you will see in the textbook. The lawyers, the judges, and those involved, they evolve and things change as we go along. For instance, for us I will talk about Sierra Leone, for instance. Sierra Leone, for us, judicial, continuing professional education, judicial education is part of our strategic plan every 5 years. We make sure that in every budget, there is allocation for that, because it is the hallmark of any good judiciary. Judges must be in a situation wherein they could learn, continue to improve themselves. That is the word, improve themselves. They cannot afford to be static. They have to be dynamic enough so that as things change, it's like a doctor. Doctors, some of them, they go on refresher courses and all these things. So we, even in the area of IT, they will tell you that they have version 5, version 4, version this, version first generation. It's in the legal field, this is what you need to oil the machinery of justice. So judicial, for instance now, let me talk about Sierra Leone. We had a situation wherein we had sexual violence was extremely rampant. Everywhere you go, sexual violence, everywhere you go. And immediately that came to my knowledge. I decided that, you know what, I am going to conduct a training. And from that training, we were able to develop ourselves, because the training then involved not only what you will learn insofar as the corroboration and all these things you will learn in handling sexual offenses, but then we had to be trained in issues that involved medical stuff. So we had doctors to come, we had prosecutors to come, and all that in order to get a property. The end result is, by the end of the training, we were thinking of setting up a sexual offenses model court. So just by judicial education, we landed with a sexual offenses model court. In the same thing, it's the same thing even in social security. There was a study tour in Ghana, etc. When we came back, we decided to do training of the judges, to train the judges, to train the magistrate. And the end result is we were able to set up a social security court. So you can, without this continuing professional development, without this continuing professional development or judicial education, everything becomes static. But there are times you do it in such a way that the judges, normally in Sierra Leone, how we do it is that when it comes to judicial education, it is the judges themselves. It is people of that cadre that will train the rest. So you have Supreme Court judges training High Court judges. You have Appeal Court judges training High Court judges. We know those that are vast in the area that do continuous development in their own field, and by that they pass on the knowledge. That is all I can say so in so far as the impact is on law and development, it is immense. It cannot be quantified. You see, because what you end up getting, the good judgments, the good rulings that will transform or change society, they all stem from this judicial education. It's not just from what you've learned at college. It's not all from what you've learned from law school. It's based on the experience and how society is evolving, that you devise new ways to meet up with those developments in order to match up with the developments in society. And in doing that, you will find out that judicial education has a great impact in law and development. For Commonwealth countries, that has been the case since over 15 years ago. They have insisted on judicial education, and it is continuing. And if there should be any judiciary that will develop or move society, that judiciary must have a basis on judicial education, must have some stuff, some amount of money being spent on judicial education. If that is not done, that judiciary will be slow to grow and impact society. I thank you.
I beg your pardon. Thank you so much, my Lord Chief Justice. I appreciate those insightful comments. Indeed, judicial education is not just about schools and degrees, it's about experience. It's about passion, it's about commitment. So we would go straight to the next so that we would be within time. With leave of my Lord, can I go on, my Lord Chief Justice? With leave of the Honorable Chief Justice, I go on to the next session. I will be introducing all of the speakers so that they would take their turns one after the other, instead of doing it one after introducing them and they present, introducing and they present. It will save us time better. So today we'll be celebrating judicial jurisprudence of Nigeria and the United States, Sierra Leone, and many other countries that we have researched on. Basically, one of the things we do is, and the aim is to go to different countries, especially African countries, and get judges, lawyers, students who are working on or researching, or who have something to show and to tell us, to be able to discuss and celebrate. So our first and keynote speaker for today is Dr. Sean Marsh. Dr. Sean Marsh, my mentor, is the director of the Judicial Studies and Justice Management graduate degree programs in the University of Nevada, Reno. He is also an associate professor of judicial studies, communication studies, and social psychology at the same university. He is a social psychologist with research and teaching interest in psychology and the law, particularly judicial education, trauma-responsive justice, and decision-making. Dr. Marsh has worked with juvenile family judges and courts and allied systems in nearly every state in the United States. Dr. Marsh has served on numerous national advisory committees, including the U.S. National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention Task Force, and the National Training Team for Racial and Ethnic Fairness in the course. Currently, Dr. Marsh is working with the U.S. Department of State and the Northern Nevada International Center to conduct and evaluate leadership institutes for International Military Academy honor students from countries including Bangladesh, Malaysia, Colombia, and Bulgaria. Next would be Honorable Justice Adewale Abib Abiru. Now, it took me a long time to get my Lord to present. I am glad finally that my Lord could get time from his very busy and committed schedule to be here. Honorable Justice Abiru JCA, Justice of the Court of Appeal of Nigeria, is a Justice of the Court of, is in the Akure Judicial Division. His career on the bench started as a judge of the High Court of Lagos State. Justice Abiru holds a master's in law degree from the University of Ife. He was a lecturer at the Faculty of Law at Lagos State University. He has made several presentations and published several articles on judicial development and judicial administration. The Orida JCA is a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Arbitrators and a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. He has been a member of several committees on the development of judges in the judiciary and also a coach of judges in diverse courts and especially the High Court of Lagos State. His judicial philosophy is quite unique, yet revolutionary in judgments that anchor the impacts of courts on societal development and courts as agents of social change. Like the Honorable Chief Justice said, Justice Abiru truly believes that courts impact law and society in diverse ways. He would be our first discussant. Then the next discussant would be Provost Joy Linger. Ms. Linger is the Provost of the National Judicial College, the oldest and largest school of judges in the United States. They pride themselves as the Harvard of Judicial Studies. It is the only judicial college that has a PhD in judicial studies. She is ultimately responsible for the quality and relevance of education at the college. Ms. Linger has been an executive leader for over 15 years. She works to improve the justice system by educating judges, providing technical assistance, facilitating cross-jurisdiction sharing of best practices, encouraging judicial leadership, and setting the bar for the highest standards of judicial ethics and competence. Over the past decade, Ms. Linger led NJC to record academic achievements, educating more than 10,000 judges and court service professionals each year through in-person and online courses. I was a beneficiary, still am, of such wonderful, insightful, and very practical sessions. Before joining the NJC, Ms. Linger spent 10 years at the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, most recently as Director of the Juvenile and Family Law Department. Ms. Linger is a regular faculty member of NJC and President-elect of the National Association of State Judicial Educators. Before her work in National Judicial Education Defense, civil litigation, and family law. Ms. Linger practiced law in Canada, working in a general practice firm that handled crime, and she received the bachelor's degree there and Juris Doctor for the University of Saskatchewan. Yes, I hope I got that right. The Honorable Justice Salisu Garba Abdullahi, who unfortunately will not be here with us today, but is being represented. He has an official duty, just came in from the United Kingdom on official duty and is on his way out on official duty as well regarding judicial education for the Nigerian judges. So Honorable Justice Salisu Garba is the National Judicial Institute Administrator. His Lordship is passionate about quality training, not just for judges, but also for anything surrounding judicial development. He was the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, Nigeria. This visionary leader of the foremost training center for Nigerian judges and magistrates ensures round-the-clock training for all Nigerian judges. His vision is to collaborate with domestic and international organizations to advance judicial jurisprudence and develop the judiciary. With world-class facilities, the NJI caters to the intellectual needs and recently emotional needs of all Nigerian judges. NJI, through its Curriculum Development Committee, is collaborating with A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting to create new courses to train judges. The presentation of the position paper was at the second edition of our Court and Society webinar, where I made a presentation of proposed courses that I had sent to them earlier. And their session, the Curriculum Development Committee session, graciously was part of inculcated our webinar as part of their session and vice versa. Representing him today would be Ms. Attorney, actually, Ifeoma Uzofuna, a current principal research fellow of the National Judicial Institute. She obtained her LLB, Bachelor of Law degrees from Enugu State University, and she was called to the Nigerian Bar in 2004. Ms. Uzofuna started her career in the chambers of Mago, Ofia, and Co. And she was in active legal practice before her appointment into the Institute, and she's been in the Institute since then. Her objectives have been to seek opportunities to offer competence and experience in discharging judicial administration, and has had passion in that area. She has served as a member of the Internal Education Committee of the National Judicial Institute for the past 7 years. And the committee is charged with the research and development of continuing judicial education for judicial officers and their support staff. She has done extensive work, and most of the times you know that people like her are the backbones of strong leaders like Honorable Justice Salisu Garba Abdullahi. So she will be giving the presentation on his behalf. And one thing I would also want to say about my Lord, the administrator of the National Judicial Institute, is somebody who is very inclusive. When we talk about diversity and inclusivity, we would commend highly, would acknowledge highly and compliment the Honorable Justice Salisu Garba Abdullahi of the National Judicial Institute of Nigeria. So judicial education, Milord said that you don't have to go to school or have a degree for, you don't have to have a degree in judicial studies or get for you to have judicial education. It's a combination of all. So, but for today, we would have two judges who have attended the judicial studies program like myself, and any other who is out there would give the floor open, who has been part of the Judicial Institute of your various countries, who would want to please share how personally your life has impacted your role as a judge and the law in somewhat. So for specifically to anchor that session or to discuss or set the ball rolling would be Honorable Judge James Spoo, who has a Master's in Judicial Studies from University of Nevada, Reno. Honorable Judge James Spoo is a municipal court judge in the city of Sparks, Nevada, in his third 6-year term. He holds a Master's of Judicial Studies degree and is at the dissertation stage of the Doctorate in Judicial Studies Department of the University of Nevada, Reno. In addition to the Juris Doctor degree, he holds a Master's of Arts degree. Judge Spoo served as a state administrative law judge and a civil law firm partner for approximately 20 years. He was an adjunct professor of the University of Nevada, Reno for 14 years. Judge Spoo served his country at the municipal, state, and federal levels at different times. He was a deputy attorney general, an assistant city attorney, and while in law school, he was a legislative analyst for the United States Congress. Judge Spoo served 2 terms as mayor of his city and was an executive director of economic development for the state of Nevada. He also served in the United States Army. Thanks for serving. Judge Spoo holds numerous judicial-related board and committee positions and professional membership. Judge John Larson. Judge John Larson serves as an administrative law judge for the California Public Utilities Commission, where he has presided since 2020. He has served as an administrative law judge and mediator for the California Department of Insurance, and he has served as the Deputy Commissioner for the California Board of Parole. He obtained a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, a Juris Doctorate degree from Santa Clara University School of Law, and a Master's in Judicial Studies from the University of Nevada and the Judicial Studies program of the National Judicial College, where he lectures. And he is also a PhD candidate. So without much ado, I would leave the floor for I beg your pardon, for Professor Sean Marsh.
Good morning, and
Good
thank
to
you.
see you, Sean.
It's good to see you too, Judge/Dr. Toby. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you, sir.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Judge, for asking me to speak today and to talk a bit about judicial education and some reflections on the current status of judicial education, particularly at this really interesting time in history with the pandemic and COVID, court responses to that, how we're dealing with that, and then the impact on judges and those seeking justice by coming to the courts. As Judge Toby mentioned, my name is Sean Marsh. I am a professor at the University of Nevada, Reno. I wear multiple hats in my position. One of them is the Director of Judicial Studies, which I'll be talking about today. But I also work and do teaching and research in the areas of social psychology and communication studies, where I specialize in crisis communication, which comes in handy when working with courts in the current climate of a pandemic. I'm a social psychologist by training. I am not law trained. However, my area of study is legal psychology. My research centers on three primary areas, one being bias in decision-making, particularly in the context of courts and decisions about victims and offenders. Trauma responsive justice is another area, and I'll be talking a bit about that because of its intersect with the pandemic and COVID. And then lastly, I've been researching and teaching quite a bit around judicial education, the strategies used, how to do it better, what that looks like, how to collaborate and coordinate and expand so that we can learn from folks like you on this webinar. And again, with the ultimate goal to do better for the consumers of justice. As I mentioned, I'm particularly interested in this area of trauma and its impact on behavior and human development. And again, in the context of the administration of justice. What we mean by that is we recognize that substantial adversity and trauma, beginning very early in life, for example, with child abuse or neglect, perhaps parental conflict in the home, family violence in the home. Perhaps one of the parents is not present, maybe their own system involvement with the justice system. And we can go on and on and on, and are very aware of the social challenges that all of us face in all cultures and societies. But what I'm interested in is understanding how that plays out in the longer term. And when we start seeing children and adults that come before you on the bench that have had histories of trauma and adversity, how are their behaviors, and actually quite normative and understandable behaviors, how are those interfering perhaps with their best outcomes, or perhaps interfering with our best judgment about what these folks need? So I spent a lot of time observing in courts. I spent a lot of time observing judges interacting with both victims and offenders. I've observed judges talking with and dealing with young people, children. How do we seek testimony, for example, from young children in very serious cases? Are there ways to make them more comfortable, to make them more willing to share their information, but in a way that does not re-traumatize them? All of those issues are fair game in this trauma responsive justice efforts. I also note that part of that research involves better understanding the impact of what it is you do as judges, as legal professionals. What is the impact on you? We do know that what we call vicarious or secondary traumatic exposures, which is in essence a fancy way of saying you hear really bad things all day long, oftentimes as a judge. How does that play out in your own life, in your own development, in your own functioning? And we do know that being a judge is an extremely isolating experience. And we do know that judges, as human beings, although very impressive and very educated and very accomplished human beings, are nonetheless human beings. And that exposures to trauma and adversity can have impacts on your health, your well-being, and perhaps more as important, your worldview of how the world works and understand these things that happen around us. So I will probably return a bit to that in my later comments, but I do want to share at Judge Toby's request a bit about our judicial education model that we have at this program at the University of Nevada, Reno, at which the judge is a graduate. And I see that we have the good Judge Larson joining us. Welcome, Judge. Some other folks that I've been working with and involved with over the years. So this particular program is quite unique at the University of Nevada, Reno. As you likely know, the United States does not have a formal system for training our judges. In other words, we don't have necessarily separate schools or tracks for judges as they're going through law school. Every state is a bit different in terms of what's required. The long and the short of that is good partners of ours, the National Judicial College, for example, have been developed over the years to address this need for education and ongoing education. It is not unusual for judges to be on the bench in the United States with almost zero training or education on being a judge. So folks like the National Judicial College, and we think that our degree program serve an important purpose. Ours was developed with the idea back in the 1980s by a sociologist, and actually a legal sociologist, that worked with judges in courts and observed that judging is so terribly unique. It is so different than just about any other occupation, and for lots of reasons. An independent branch of government, the roles that this serve, the decisions that they make, the life type existential decisions they make. For example, I work with judges that have to sign do not resuscitate orders for young children that have been severely injured. This is extremely difficult work. My predecessor and colleague realized that it is so specialized that it should and does deserve its own field of study. And he was one of the first with his colleagues, again back in the 1980s, to propose a specific field of judicial studies as an area of social science, research, and teaching. The program began very modestly, but quickly grew. We eventually became popular enough that in the 1990s, and we had enough interest that we began to offer a PhD in judicial studies. I should note, we are the only university that offers a PhD in judicial studies. And indeed, Judge Toby was one of our graduates of the PhD. And she is one of our first international graduate, first graduate from Nigeria, and first Black woman to earn this doctorate in judicial studies. So we are very proud of her and very proud of her efforts here. And I applaud again, Judge Toby, your efforts to connect the dots, as you and I have talked about so many times.
Thank you, Sean.
In the 1990s, we introduced the PhD, and we've continued to grow from there. The goal of the program is to develop and promote the field of judging, of judicial studies, and to promote it and identify it and place it in the world of research and scholarship as a unique field of social science. And I underline science because I do see myself and am a scientist, But as Judge Larson so carefully points out to me routinely, that there's a huge component of judging that isn't science. And I imagine that that may come up in a later discussion. But this idea is to introduce judges to things they may not normally be exposed to through law school or other judicial trainings. So we involve topics such as criminology, better understanding trauma's impact on human development. We also cover the history and theory of judging in a very nuanced and deep scholarly way. We teach science and law, science and medicine. We also teach research methods specific for judges in their work in courts. So we try to develop essentially judicial scientists to assist in guiding and framing the scholarship around this act of judging. In our faculty in doing this, and this is where I'm excited to have so many folks here from different places, is we use a model of bringing in faculty from all over the country and the world when possible. We find that this diversity in experience and this breadth in experience is incredibly valuable and gives judges exposure to ideas, thoughts, and practices they normally would not have exposure to. Now, why do our students take this program? You might say to yourself, judges are accomplished, they have a status, they're doing well in their career and profession. Why would they have this desire to go on for further education? And Chief Justice, I enjoyed your remarks this morning and nod and acknowledge, yes, everything you said about the importance of this work in ongoing education and as a development issue. Now, the students that come through this program report several instrumental benefits, and taking this sort of educational track above the benefits of learning itself. Some will cite, for example, supporting re-election efforts or a promotion on to the next bench or the next higher level of work. But most emphasize what I just emphasized: exposure to scientific thinking, work, and processes they wouldn't be normally exposed to in law school. It helps them understand, they report it helps them understand the bigger picture. And lastly, and I think that this is critical, and I've heard this for many years, and I think my colleague, Ms. Joy Lingard, might parrot this, agree with this, but that as judging is such an isolating position that it is done oftentimes without the levels of support you would have if you weren't a judge, that having a chance to come together and be in a safe place with fellow judges to talk about the work that you do, the challenges that you face, and to exchange ideas, again in a safe place with your fellow colleagues, is an incredibly important and valuable experience. Oftentimes these relationships and these networks are lifetime networks and relationships. I think Judge Toby and I will be in contact for the remainder of our professional careers, if not beyond. The same with Judge Larson, Judge Spoo, and others. So there's this also this tangible support and exchange sort of component to the degree program that we find judges feel is very valuable. Now, in terms of scope, just generally, we, over the years, even though judges come to us as full-time sitting working judges, we have managed to graduate over 200 with a master's degree in judicial studies. And number 22 was our good Dr. Toby on the call today, number 22 of our PhD. So we're moving into about coming up on pretty closely, hopefully the next few years, about 30 PhD graduates. I will say that we're again the only one that offers the PhD. Our major competitor, and we're not really competitors, we're collaborators, is Duke University, and they do offer a master's judicial studies for judges as well. The last of my comments here is to talk just very briefly about how the last 2 years with COVID, and in the United States some recent court cases that involved violence towards arrestees that have led to death in some cases. Some may be familiar with the case of George Floyd in the United States. One of the things that this program and these kinds of efforts, as this webinar do, is to give voice to the judiciary in an ethical way, to let folks know we know some things. And we know some things about how the administration of justice can be done in a trauma-sensitive manner, can be done in a way that improves outcomes for people coming in contact with the system. I think it's also fair to say that at least in the United States in particular, that the judiciary is under scrutiny, and I think the judiciary is misunderstood increasingly. And we have a role in the extent that we can, again, ethically, to keep that narrative and rhetoric on track and on point and accurate, and to address misinformation as it comes out, and to emphasize this idea, we know some things. We've been doing this a while, you've been doing this a while, and we have some comments on about how this can be done and work better. Now in 2022, it's just a fact that we face in our country unprecedented threats to our democracy and rule of law. I think that's about as frank as we can be and straightforward, that these are challenges that we are going through and that are frustrating and that are taking an incredible amount of time, effort, and patience to address and to address well. I think a well-informed, thoughtful, and ethical judiciary is likely more important than ever. And it is always important, but in light of this context, in the United States in particular, I think it's due noting. We know from feedback that judges, about how to be a judge is critical. I've already covered that, so I won't belabor that point. Also, I won't belabor the point that the opportunity to come together and have connections and mutual support and people that you can call on in times of need is important. But then lastly, what this provides, these educational opportunities, including this webinar, is really a pathway by which judges and others and colleagues doing the work of justice can acquire the skills to identify, implement, and assess evidence-based practices in their courts, in their jurisdictions, to improve outcomes. And this is where a lot of the work I do in trauma-informed care. So again, these are just some general opening remarks and comments and some thoughts that have been on my mind. One of the things I very much appreciate about these efforts is the international component. We are very eager and have invested quite a bit of resources in attracting and working with international judges. Again, we have several judges from Nigeria. We have some judges from Sierra Leone. We are quite proud of our Canadian judges. I can go on and on and on. There are challenges for our international folks to join us in this educational effort, but I think that we're seeing today with technology, and I think with some creativity and some stick-to-itiveness, as we like to say, that we can continue to develop these relationships and share the knowledge that each of us has and brings to the table. Again, I cannot emphasize the importance of those connections. To that end, I am a resource to you. Part of my role as a university professor and expectation is to serve our community. And I look at our community as a global community, particularly through the lens of the judicial education, of working with judges, and the importance of courts. So if there's ever any question that you might have that falls in my realm of expertise or about this program, I welcome your emails, I welcome your call, and I welcome you to come visit and sit through and see what it is that we do. And I remain open to learning from you as well, and love learning from other countries and other courts and judges. So with that, I'm going to conclude my remarks. Thank you again, Judge Toby, and thank you again, Chief Justice, for your opening words. And with that, I cede my time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Like I typed in the chat too, Honorable Chief Justice would be leaving for another meeting, so he wants to say his goodbye. My Lord, Honorable Chief Justice, please.
My lords, professors, Harry, I hate to leave now, to be honest. What you're doing is quite interesting. And we're learning a lot. I would have loved to stay and learn more, but unfortunately I have to leave. One thing I would like to say is that we would appreciate that if the Judiciary of Sierra Leone could be involved, in the sense that judicial education is so important. And we will welcome any level of assistance in that. We look at from the area of, there's a dearth of qualified judicial educators, let me put it that way. Like you study now judicial studies. We have Justice Robert, he's the only one, he's the director of the Judicial Institute. And we'll need more of those kinds that will help us in organizing our trainings, facilitating our trainings. We have a faculty, but then these are people that need more training. Again, for what have been happening this morning, we have been talking more about the judges. It goes beyond, judicial training goes beyond judges. We're talking about the courts. It's so unique, the whole aspect of managing courts, it's a unique thing. So the administrative staff, if they are not well trained, if they don't receive the continuing education in order to work within that justice sector, they will be left out. So the whole, from top to bottom, there should be that type of training, because judicial education is unique. The courts are a unique creature and how they operate. So I guess there will be recording of this. I will be able to follow up and we'll be having more contacts as we go on. I thank you all for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Chief Justice. Indeed.
And I beg to leave now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I was just going to say that the NJC and us, we're working on something in that respect. So thank you. So the next speaker would be, finally, Justice Abiru. Thank you, my Lord. The first webinar he was supposed to participate, the symposium last year, but he was sitting, he had to travel between states. And the second one, which is the first webinar presentation, he was also engaged otherwise. You know, when you have the stuff, you are needed everywhere, judicial education. So I'm finally happy that even in his vacation, he decided to say, Ari, I'll give you this one. So thank you, sir. My Lord Justice Abiru.
Thank you, Ari, for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Sean, good afternoon. I'm seeing you for the first time. I think we communicated when Ari was having was in a PhD.
Oh yes, I forgot to say that part that you were yes, an external.
Yes,
yes, sir. Forgive me, yes, I forgot that part.
I remember that. Thank you, Ari, for having me. Although I must say that you practically compelled me to appear at this seminar.
They no bomb me now to compel it just for the court of appeal. They no bomb me. I didn't.
It's all right. The topic of this course, it's something that I'm very interested in. Judicial training and the impact of social development and on law. I've been involved in judicial training for quite a while. And the key issue is, look, at the fundamental level, judicial training and education are an essential element of judicial independence, as it helps to ensure impartiality, competency, efficiency, and effectiveness of the judiciary. The quality of the judiciary is an essential component in achieving access to justice. And a key element in maintaining the high quality of judiciary is judicial education. In an age that increasingly demands more judicial independence and understanding to solve increasingly complex and sensitive issues, society lives to be settled by litigation. the need for judicial education is perceived as greater than ever. Let me start by telling a story of a new judge who has just been appointed. He's putting on his role for the first time. Soon he will step on the bench to hear his first case. It's a moment of great pride to him. A few weeks ago, when his appointment was announced, he was congratulated by friends and family. Everyone wanted to congratulate him and wish him well. But today, as he climbs onto the stairs to enter the court, the point is he fully prepared to deliver justice? That's the question that needs to be asked. Because justice and giving judgment is beyond taking decisions. To be sure, deciding the fate of others is not inherently difficult. Thousands quite happily make such decisions based on prejudice and untested beliefs, decisions of whim and arbitrary will, decisions that take no account of rules or principles or the true condition of those whose fate is decided can be made by any fool. But such decisions have nothing to do with judging. They are not judgments, as judges use the word. Judging, passing judgment on others, carries a special significance for us. So it's not as easy as making a decision. Judging is a significant act that requires careful attention and respect for legal rules and principles. It's an act that requires qualities of humanity and compassion. Judging requires effort to shed prejudice and untested beliefs. Aware as he is of his new responsibility, the new judge cannot help but pause and wonder whether they can meet the expectation of others, other expectations in this respect. Being a judge also means being part of something larger, something which carries enormous significance to the freedom and well-being of others. Judges individually and courts as institutions are central figures in public life. Strong, independent judicial institutions ensure that government power is exercised in accordance with law. Healthy judicial institutions are a symbol of neutrality of the state and its ability to deliver justice regardless of financial status, creed, or beliefs. Wise judicial institutions constitute a common space accessible to all, a place where people can peacefully resolve conflicts, a place where words, rules, and ideas replace fists, weapons, and violence. A true system of justice is measured against these standards. Every new judge cannot help but pause and wonder whether I can contribute to this most fundamental purpose of judiciary. The new judge in my story, a man sitting on the bench, has brothers and sisters, not only in the judicial institutions of his own country, but around the world. New judges like him who share his pride and apprehension. Some of these judges face challenges far greater than our new judge ever will. But these judges, wherever they may work, whatever the circumstance, share something in common with the new judge. All judges, wherever they are, can only survive with a lifelong project of learning. In other words, the new role of judges takes him to two different connected planes. Being a judge has a personal and institutional dimension. It's by engaging both of these dimensions, the personal and institutional, judicial learning can support the rule of law and peaceful cultural diversity. The most obvious aspect of education is transmission of knowledge and information. Judges are expected to know the law. In fact, they must be experts in law. For many judges in courts of general jurisdiction, this means they must be experts in every field of law. Hitherto, it was believed that new judges did not need to be trained. Most were appointed from the practicing bar. Most, if not all, believed that their experience as lawyers was sufficient to guide them in their new task as judges. They also believed that the required skills and wisdom will come without effort. We no longer believe that one can become a judge and continue to be a judge without proper training. We have learned how difficult it can be to decide cases under newly enacted laws without a proper understanding of their purpose and designs. We have learned that judges can be called upon to play new roles as mediation and dispute resolution, and that this role rests on mastery of complex processes and skills. We have learned that judges can write more effectively and be more responsive to the needs of litigants in the delivery of reasons for judgment. We have learned that judges must be attuned to the psychological dimensions of being a witness or a litigant or a lawyer in very special atmosphere of a courtroom. In short, we have learned that in terms of knowledge and skills, being a judge is not the same thing as being a lawyer. In that sense, judicial education is about keeping up to date with changes in law from the perspective of one who must give shape and meaning to those changes. In countries with lay judges, judicial education is about providing basic legal training to magistrates and others who are justice in remote areas. Judicial education is about transmission of distinctive legal knowledge and transmission of unique skills. The purpose of judicial education, a trained judge who decides according to the law is a judge in the service of the rule of law. A trained judge, the one who delivers prompt and effective justice, the judge in the service of the rule of law. But judicial education as a personal project is much more than this. It's in accordance with the law, within reasonable time, and in accordance with the processes mandated by the law, is but one part of the judicial task. Justice must also be delivered in a responsive manner, one that takes account of social context and different perspectives of those who seek it. In today's diverse societies, this aspect of judging has gained heightened importance. Justice must also be delivered in an impartial manner, one which is free from prejudice and false assumptions. In a world marked by pluralism, in communities where diversity is so prevalent, the judge must become the interpreter of difference. The judge must become one who listens to and understands every voice. We are not judges of this community or that community. We are judges of everyone in every sector of society, high and low, rich and poor. We are in no one's corner or in no one's pocket. We are independent and hence impartial. Maintaining impartiality in this high sense demands constant learning by and effort by the judge, which come to the bench with a past, a parcel of assumptions and beliefs, and a unique life experience. These roots, experiences, and assumptions are, of course, of great utility as they carry out and reach a role. However, at the same time, they must be accounted for and held in check. The judge must learn to separate himself as a citizen from himself as a judge. He must learn to recognize his own biases and struggle to keep them out of the act of judging. Conversely, the judge must learn to recognize the biases of others, their cultural commitments and assumptions, their particular voice and perspective. These and other aspects of social context must constitute an important part of judicial education. And the product of this education, the trained judge who is aware of social context, the trained judge who is responsible with defense, is a judge equipped to decide cases which raise issues related to diversity, freedom of religion, freedom of association, and equality rights. On the institutional plane, judicial education should enhance the connection of judiciary in the broad sense and the social role. It should do this in two ways. First, judicial education should sustain an ethic of independence from political powers, provide judges with the courage and resources to exercise authority that is theirs under the rule of law, to provide them with a clear sense of their distinctive role as guardians of the rule of law, and impartial, 1 minute. I'll be with you in a minute. I lost that. Yes. Impartial and objective decision makers wielding an authority that is different from that of the other branches of government. Secondly, judicial education should instill an ethic of cultural neutrality. Courts should be neutral. Courts should be neutral places, visible symbols of peaceful interaction. Courts should be places where the dignity of each human being is respected and enforced, regardless of financial status, religious beliefs, or gender. Courts should represent a space held in common where one can encounter difference without risk of losing his or distinctive identity. For a court to play this role, each judge must learn how best to embrace diversity. For this reason, judicial education itself should be attuned to social diversity. To achieve this goal, there must be a robust and effective judicial education program for judges. It's particularly more so in the present times with the rapidity of the changes and innovations that are taking place in our spheres. The need for judicial education to ensure that judges remain in touch with social development has been advocated for over 4 decades. An article titled Judiciary and the Non-Judicial Activities, published in Volume 25 of Law and Direct Problems in 1970. American writer R. Marquez stated, and I quote, "To be easy, but naturally lazy to hold that the sole business of judges is judging. That all else is at least distracting, and accordingly, a judge should avoid all non-judicial activities that might either be time-consuming or influence his opinion on matters that come before him. The judge is likely to be a better dispenser of justice if he's aware of the current passions of the time and developments of technology and sweep of events. To judge in the real world, a judge must live, think and partake of opinions in the real world." Now, so to meet all these aspirations, judicial education must be designed in such a way that it brings about the best and equipped judges, the ability to meet the real-time issues that are going on right now. This is the only way in which we can promote equality, we can promote neutrality, we can promote justice within the polity. And this is the way people can be attuned with it. You must understand something. The judiciary forms the major arm by which people feel that they are in tune with government. No matter what everybody does to them, if a person feels that he can go to court and get justice, and that the justice he gets meets with the demands of the environment, it will be attuned, it will be easy for him to cope with whatever laws that is thrown at him by the legislature. So it is essential for social cohesion and social development that judges must be badly trained in the manner that will make them responsive to the needs of society. In Nigeria, we have the NGI. They're going to make a presentation that is with training. But we need to specialize our training more, because we are going into an age now in which we have new areas of development. Fintech is coming up, cybercrime is there, terrorism and bullying in cyberspace is there. There's so many things now developing online in terms of, and law needs to catch up with these things. Now, laws are being made. There's a law on cybercrime, there's a law on terrorism, money laundering and terrorism, there are new laws on it. It is essential that judges are equipped and well-trained in all these areas, so that they are more relevant to society at large, so that people will feel they have a judiciary that meets the needs of our people. I think I'll stop my comments for now, and I'll continue if need be later. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, my lord. We appreciate that wonderful and jurisprudential approach to the discussion. So without much, we'll go to, yes, before I forget, my lord was part of the external committee, the only external committee for my thesis on my master's in judicial studies. I forgot that aspect to say that. So the next discussant will be Ms. Joyce Lingua, please.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, greetings, and I want to thank you, Judge Dr. Toby, for this opportunity to address this distinguished group and be part of this important conversation. I bring you greetings from the National Judicial College, and I wanted to tell you just a little bit about the college and how we fit into the judicial education picture in the U.S. You've heard a little bit of this throughout and from my colleague, Dr. Sean Marsh, but the National Judicial College is the oldest, largest, and most widely attended school for judges. We are routinely seeing between 10,000 and 20,000 judges in our programming in person and online. One of our principal founders was a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Tom Clark, 60 years ago when we were founded back in 1963. And I have to share a secret with you that at the time of our founding, there was some controversy about whether you should have a school for judges. Some people thought that by creating a school for judges, we would be admitting that judges didn't already know everything that they needed to know. I'm sure you're aware, as I am, that judges do not, in fact, know everything that they need to know the day that they take the bench. It wasn't true in 1963, and indeed, the profession has not gotten easier in the last 60 years. And so NJC was created to fill that void and make sure judges did, in fact, know what they needed to know to hear cases. And this goes back to Dr. Marcia's comments about the fact that in the US, we have no school for judges. Most of our judges go to law school, but routinely take the bench without ever having taken a single class in judging. I think you're aware that our judges come from many different backgrounds. Some of them are elected, some of them are appointed, and some of them are hired in the executive branch. At the Judicial College, we also serve tribal judges in our tribal court jurisdictions around the country, and also military judges. So since we were founded back in 1963, eventually almost every other state, every one of the 50 states in the Union, developed their own judicial education entity, following a similar model to what we use at the National Judicial College, which is having judges teach other judges. So now, again, it varies across the board, but most states do have judicial education requirements on an annual basis, and most judges can fulfill those education requirements in their own state. So the National Judicial College still exists, but we've had to change our role to be complementary to what goes on in the states. And we are optional for most of the judges that come to the college. We're located in Reno, Nevada, which is on the western part of the country, but we take courses all around to the different United States. And we have to attract our audience. We have to convince judges that they should come and take our courses by offering great opportunities for networking, sharing ideas across jurisdiction lines, and some great content that will make them feel more confident in their jobs. NJC is kind of uniquely situated to be able to offer in-depth courses. So we have the luxury, for example, of offering a 4-day course on how to handle self-represented litigants in the courtroom. We offer 4-day courses on writing. We offer 4-day courses on many evidentiary issues. So that's a benefit that most state judicial education entities don't have, is the length of time and the depth that we can go into a topic. We also have the ability to pretty quickly respond. We're actually a nonprofit organization. We've got very sort of limited bureaucracy. So if we think that a course is needed, we can quickly get that on the calendar and scheduled. One example this year is we'll be offering a course called the Anti-Racist Courtroom. And so that was a need that we saw, and we were able to quickly adapt to offer that course. So when I think about how judicial education impacts the law and society, I do think about those themes of judicial education not being a secret. Although I get into taxi cabs and the taxi driver asks me what I do, and they're often very surprised to hear that judges need continuing education, but they shouldn't be, because they know their doctors have to take continuing education. So it's not a secret anymore. And this is a theme that's come up already, which is that being a judge is a different skill set than being a lawyer. So it is not enough to just go to law school. There are definitely additional topics that you must study to be a good judge. I also want to pick up on the theme of increasing public trust and confidence. If you catch any news at all from the US, you know that we are having a crisis of confidence in our judicial system right now. And there are many political examples, but I'm going to just mention one that's a little bit less political, which is the issue of the number of wrongful convictions that take place in this country. And some of that can be attributed to judges making poor evidentiary decisions about the admissibility of scientific evidence. In some cases, admitting junk science that is then used in the conviction of individuals. And many years later, in some cases, those wrongful convictions are overturned. Well, when judges make those kinds of evidentiary rulings, erroneously, and people are wrongfully convicted, that undermines public trust and confidence in the judiciary. That's just one example, and I know you can all think of dozens more, where it is clear that having an educated judiciary, judges who have the knowledge and skills to handle the cases in front of them, is so important to keep public trust in the judicial system. And really, this third branch of government, so important to the stability of our democracy. It all ties together. And so that's really what motivates me on a day-to-day basis. You know, in addition to the core skills that you need to be a judge, there's also the fact that the times are changing, and every year there are developments in science, there are developments in the law, there are developments in fields that relate to cases that come before judges. And this has been mentioned before, even though judges are not scientists, they study the law, they are still expected to continue their studies as the world evolves in order to grasp the concepts that might come before them in a case. Some judges might be tempted to rely on the lawyer's knowledge of the underlying technology and its application in litigation, for example, but judges have an ethical duty and a legal one to competently evaluate the facts and arguments presented. So many of our courses have to do with keeping the judges up with the latest developments in law and science. I also want to mention that many of the skills involved in being a good judge are what you might call soft skills. For example, we know that the tenets of procedural fairness mean that if litigants feel like they had a fair shake, if they were treated fairly, if they were given a voice in the process, they're much more likely to accept the decision and believe that the court system treated them fairly. Again, very important for the stability of democracy. We teach judges about procedural fairness, about making eye contact with the litigants, explaining if you're going to need to look down and take notes or look at your computer, explain what you're doing, give people a chance to tell their side of the story, even if the outcome is probably already determined. So those are the kinds of skills that judges need to know, in addition to managing their courtroom or dealing with difficult litigants that might not really be about the black letter of the law, but are really a very important skill set. We also have courses here at the Judicial College on leadership skills, and we encourage judges within the bounds of ethics to be leaders in their courtroom, excuse me, and community. Judges have a great power to convene stakeholders together and get things done. So for example, if a judge sees that mental health issues are not being adequately addressed by the system, we have seen examples of where a judge convenes a group of community stakeholders to come up with a better response to defendants who come to court with mental health issues. We also have civics programs that we encourage our judges to participate in. One of them is called Reading and Robes. We have the judges put on their black robe and sit down in a classroom or a courtroom with a group of school students and read to them. Right now, we're reading books from the Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. She has different books for children at different age levels. And we encourage the judges to get out there, be part of their community, teach civics education so that people have a better understanding of the judiciary and the three branches of government. Obviously, judicial ethics is a big part of what we do. We know that people expect judges to be ethical, and we don't want to read any headlines about judges who get in trouble. That also undermines the strength of our democracy when judges are doing inappropriate things and it ends up getting media attention. Just a couple of things I want to say about 25 years I've been a judicial educator, and I have some tips and some challenges to share with you. First of all, the Judicial College is probably most successful at adult learning theory. So we know that the judges who come to our courses learn differently than children learn. And you can't design a course even the way that you did in law school. These are people that come with a lot of experience. They want to participate actively in the education. They're going to ask questions. If they're not getting what they need, they're going to let you know. So we invest a lot of time into faculty development and making sure that our subject matter experts know how to teach the information in a way that it will be digested, that people can pay attention, and that they'll have practical takeaways at the end of it. In fact, that's probably one of our biggest exports to international countries to help them with their judicial education is a series of faculty development and how to put together a curriculum and how to create learning objectives so that you're having a very rigorous educational program. One thing I want to say is that we have a lot of credibility at the Judicial College because we are very strict about attendance. I don't know that everyone has the luxury of this, but we are happy to insist that people attend all sessions during a course. And if they miss a session, then we ask them to do homework in order to get their course completion. And that's very important for us so that there's no perception that people are attending our courses only to visit another city or to get away from the office or to go golfing. We don't want any bad publicity or anything to detract from the really important work that we're doing. So I encourage as much as possible for the highest level of the court system to be behind you as you make your efforts to have a very credible education program with attendance required. You've heard a little bit about the difficult political environment we find ourselves in the US, and you may very well find yourself in similar situations in the countries that you're in. We are powerful as educators, and we do have a lot of opportunities to push the envelope, which is a phrase that means approaching or extending the limits of what is possible. And I always encourage my fellow educators to create their learning programming, not design it for comfort. Learning does not necessarily mean that judges are going to be comfortable. They may be very uncomfortable, but I encourage our educators to embrace the discomfort that comes with good education. We really do want to walk a very delicate balance sometimes and not run afoul of any state guidance that would get us banned, but we want to try to encourage judges to step out of their comfort zone. We always talk about, what do judges need to learn? And we do a lot of work around needs assessment to try to discover what judges need to know. But I think there's also truth that judges don't always know what they need to know. And sometimes the judicial education entity has to take a leadership role in determining what some of the content would be and giving judges even the things they didn't know they needed to know, which can also cause some discomfort. At the end of the day, my best tip for judicial education is that judges should risk something. You should ask the judges who come to your programming to try something new, to step out of their comfort zone. Maybe they have to give a presentation in front of their peers and receive feedback. Maybe they have to put on a black robe in a simulation of handling a very difficult litigant in the courtroom. But when you ask people to do that, then they become invested in that educational process with you, and they take more away from that. In closing, I want to say that the Judicial College is founded on this concept of sharing ideas across jurisdictional lines. It's that networking and talking to other judges about the way they handle their cases, where ideas sprout and grow. We know that's how the problem-solving court movement began, which burgeoned into the drug courts and veterans courts and those kind of things. It was judges sitting down together from different states and sharing the things that they were doing that were novel or new in their jurisdictions. So we are strong believers in that. And I wanted to extend today that we consider our international partners part of that important process. We are in the middle of a new strategic planning process. Our mission continues to be making the world a more just place by educating and inspiring its judiciary. So it is a big part of our new strategic plan to engage with our international partners so that we can share the things that we've learned in the 60 years that we've been doing this work. And we want to partner with you. I'll share our website in the chat, and I would like to be a resource to you always. And thank you again for this opportunity, Judge Toby, and I will turn the microphone back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We appreciate your comments and contributions. While we're waiting for the next speaker, I just want to take a few, make a few comments so that we don't forget. The NJI is coming up next. The representative of the NJI is coming up next. Are you ready, Ms. Uzofuna?
Hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay. Since you're ready, I'll just postpone what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My Lord Justice is present and all other distinguished participants. I want to first of all extend the sincere apologies of the administrator. He would have loved to be here, but he had to travel for a training. So was now instructed to present his paper. Please, my Lord would just like to give a brief history that the National Judicial Institute was statutorily established, conferred with the responsibility of providing continuing judicial education. Started with responsibility providing judicial education for judicial officers and their support staff. The support staff ranges from the court registrars, the bailiffs, the librarians working in the courts. We have the magistrates. We just basically everybody working, even the securities, they all get their trainings from the institutes, part of what we were called to do. It is the intellectual arm of the judiciary. It was established by the National Judicial Act, Cap N55 of the Federation, 2004. What we do at the institute was established a governance structure for the judicial training body chaired by the Chief Justice of Nigeria and Chairman Board of Governors of the institute. Our Board of Governors includes the President of the Court of Appeal, the Chief Judges of the 36 states of the Federation, and FCT, the Federal High Courts, the National Industrial Courts, selected heads of specialized courts in the country, Attorney General of the Federation, and 4 other persons of unquestionable character. The educational experts and representatives of community interests are often engaged in the institute. This includes essentially, and in line with the NJI foundational philosophy, promoting effective uniformity and improvement in the quality of judicial services in our courts. We involve members of the judiciary and relevant stakeholders in the planning, establishment, management, and evaluation of our judicial training programs. Like Judge Ari earlier mentioned that she's collaborating with us. We are working on developing our curriculum, at least further development, to bring it apart with the STJs within the present situations we have in the country. We use annual field research, the needs assessments, curriculum design to deliver and evaluate the stages to plan, methodology and systematically. NJI hosts the routine impact assessment and training needs as stakeholders engagement. We use the data gathered from this training impact assessment and training needs identified in the field research in planning, building and reviewing the content, as well as monitoring level of our application to assess and formulate the provisions of training services to meet identified training needs. We develop a training of trainers program for the judges and the court staff, because most times the National Judicial Institute is only established in Abuja, but we have various courts in all over the state. And most times, because of financial constraints, the courts are unable to all visit the institute at once. So we most times do the train we pick from the various courts, do the training and prepare them to go back to their various jurisdictions and step those trainings down to those who couldn't make it to the institute. We also have the area of collaboration. We partner with several organizations, both international, like UNODC, UNICEF, IOM, the Judicial College of England and Wales, and a host of others. We also have our local organizations that we collaborate with, and which they have interest in, specific areas. We have had trainings with organizations collaborating with EFCC, ICPC, the police, AMCON, and a host of others, bridging a gap. The Socio-Judicial Institute forms like a bridge where we found that there are issues. We put a symposium, we put conferences where there are collaborations and interactive sessions where both the judiciary and other justice sectors come together to look at the law, discuss. And such discussions have resulted to amendments to some of the acts of the nation to help improve the law. As regards international training collaborations, the Institute has, for a number of years, been collaborating with other judiciary. We have hosted a couple of times the judges from the Republic of Gambia that came to NJI to participate in our induction course for newly appointed judges. They were also here this year, 2022. And we design and implement strategies for effective monitoring and evaluation of our activities based on ranges of indicators measuring efficiency, efforts, and results. The Institute has, over the years, after, from discussions, from research done, saw that outside the judiciary, the core judiciary, we have noticed from complaints from the church that there was need to also bring in investigators and prosecutors to also have trainings with them, to better interactions with the judges, to know most times where things are going wrong in the court and why such things happen. So we currently have in our curriculum a workshop that we do for investigators and prosecutors who come from the police department, the Ministry of Justice, and the one for this year will soon be ongoing within this month of September. Apart from us also doing the training, like we said, we also bring other stakeholders who also specific areas that have trainings. We have this US Department of Justice on intellectual property. The areas of intellectual property and cybercrime, we have had collaborations where we've trained judges specifically in this area. We have had other collaborations with other organizations, UNODC, child rights, and we have collaborated that we have even gone down to train the trainer, gone down state to state to do the training. We are currently working on one with the Judicial College of Wales to train magistrates, especially on this area, and that collaboration is still ongoing and we are working on it. So now looking at the aspects listed, the way forward in this view, that physical and structural growth being largely achieved, intellectual progress and human capacity will become the key focus of the Institute. International best practices and utilizing effective methodology for training, delivery, and step down the knowledge will be prioritized and implemented. And implementing the needs and impact assessments, the core-minded expected of every judicial training will be in constant focus. Constant update and feedback from the findings of such assessment to be implemented within the scope and funding provided to the Institute. Database management to ensure the right audience arrive at the right programs designed for them and that no one is left behind. And serving as a vital think tank to the judiciary with active contribution to policy development and governance, and being the repository of knowledge with the future improvements planned for library and records, then to be at the forefront and integral to national discourse on all matters involving the judiciary. Then judicial education is important for developing judicial competence then a crucial component of promoting sustainable development through helping create a secure investment environment, consolidating judicial independence, improving access to justice and rule of law. So, we also highlighted some of the being a judicial institute, both in Nigeria and I believe in some other ways, that there are challenges that, because most times the political will to support are not always there, hence the need to, keep on interacting and talking with them to see that these things are looked in and helped out. Then adequate and getting funding without compromising judicial independence. Then integrating judicial training with broader sector-wide law and justice development. Collaborating with stakeholders to develop technical sound curriculum. The development of judicial training is generally seen as systematic. The Institute is currently working on a curriculum. We are trying to enhance what we have already, looking at some areas that we may be lacking. So we have invited different organizations, of which A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting is part of it, to help strengthen our training programs to ensure that in all that we are not lacking in any area. In conclusion, my Lord advised that the net effect of prosecuting for judicial officers will be a faster and more efficient legal system, with judicial officers more aware of their duties in adjudication. I can confidently say, therefore, that in furtherance of its statutory mandates, the National Judicial Institute will continue to partner with bodies and organizations towards improving the capacity of judicial officers and their support staff. It is my fervent hope that we would raise the awareness of judicial officers on contemporary issues. We must continue to identify ways that will improve the capacity of judicial officers and support staff in line with global best practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate the Administrator of the National Judicial Institute for sending his representative. And before we go on, I'd like to acknowledge the President of the National Judicial College. He is not here with us, but he is a hardworking, committed leader to judicial education. And I just want to give a kudos to him and his hard work in training judges from all over the world. And also to our boss in Nigeria, the Administrator of the National Judicial Institute. So the next session, I was hoping that we'll take questions. For now, we'll take 1 or 2 questions. And then the next session would have judges that have had the judicial studies program, that have taken the judicial studies program, or that have had any form of training in judicial education that want to share how they have been impacted by their judicial education, and how the courts have a role to play in developing society. So if Ugo has any questions, we can take 1 or 2 questions before we go to the next session. And this would be a heads up for those who are amongst our participants who have done any judicial training, and you would be given time to talk about what you think and what you feel and what you have experienced in your judicial training as how it relates to your role as a judge or a magistrate and how it impacts society and law. So the floor would be open. This is a kind of an open session, and it will be chaired by Judge John Larson. So we'll take questions. We'll take 1 or 2 questions before we go, Judge.
Okay. Go ahead, and let me just start with an earlier question that Judge Toby put in the chat, and that was, how does or how can judicial education impact engineering standards and practices. And I can speak to this as I'm now working at the California Public Utilities Commission. And one of the things that we do there is we help to resolve disputes regarding engineering standards. And this is a subject of administrative law, which is something that we have a lot of in the United States and California in particular. And one of the things judges do is help engineers develop new rules. For example, around electrifying the energy systems. As the California is switching from gas to electricity, there are lots of disputes about how the electricity is provided. And judges can play key roles in that, because engineers are not trained in developing policy and writing it and resolving disputes about it. But anyway, we have a couple other judges here, and I want to give everyone a chance to just give some examples of what we've been talking about. But let me just introduce myself a little bit more first. Thank you, Judge Toby, for inviting me here. I'm speaking to you from California, and I am a graduate of the Judicial Studies program at the University of Nevada, and I'm in its PhD program. I have been a judge for 17 years for 3 different agencies, and judicial education has had a very valuable impact on my experience as a judge. But since we have a couple of my colleagues here, perhaps we could just each give some examples of how judicial education has enhanced your experience as a judge. And so how about if we go to Judge Spoon from Nevada. Hello, Judge Spoon. Do you have any examples? What comes first to mind as an example of this?
Well, thank you, Judge Larson. I am Judge Spoo, 16 years on the bench in Sparks, state of Nevada, United States, which is immediately next door to the city of Reno, Nevada, and therefore next door to the Judicial Studies program at the University of Nevada, Reno, and the National Judicial College, both which are unique in the entire world, to my knowledge. I have benefited greatly from going there, have finished the Master of Judicial Studies, and am entering the doctoral program as well, and possibly right at the dissertation stage, I hope. In any event, the answer to your question, which I'll keep brief for the moment in order to give some of the very distinguished panel a chance to answer as well. I'm honored to be online with such a distinguished panel from whom I could probably learn a great deal more than I could teach them. But in any event, I think we come to the judiciary. By the way, I was in a civil law practice for many years before assuming the bench, and held other public offices, as a matter of fact, in the state of Nevada and locally. So I come with a bit of diverse experience, but I think we come to the bench, Judge Larson and other judges, and those of you who may not be judges may realize as well that we think we know considerably more than we know coming to the bench, because in the state of Nevada and other states, unlike the state of California, that we are elected. We are elected from our jurisdiction to serve on the bench, or not to serve, as it may be. And so it has been argued that perhaps we do not come in every instance. I know I certainly didn't come to the judiciary, to the bench, knowing all of the things that were essential to know. And the diversity of knowledge that is helpful and I should say requisite for judging is as diverse as is the world, as is the populations of the world. At the Judicial Studies program, one is exposed to all manner of hard science and soft science, if we can say it that way, to economics, to finance, to psychology, to medicine, to family law, to sociology, and the insight and knowledge that gives to me in every single case, I cannot even fathom. My jurisdiction is entirely criminal, including all kinds of criminal matters at the misdemeanor level, of course, including huge volumes of domestic violence, which I see on a daily basis. And the insights that I have gained from judicial studies into how to approach victims and witnesses, and of course the defendant in the rehabilitation side of the sentencing. The insights I've gained from these diverse studies have over the years made me, at least in my estimation, a far, far better judge than I was when I came to the bench. And I now consider that education indispensable. And I'll tell you one little insight that occurs to me almost on a daily basis. After a court session, whether it's an arraignment or a trial session, I turn to my court clerk quite often and say, you know, every single person we see is a story. They're not just a defendant. They're not just a number, a case number. They're not just another person passing through the judicial system. They are a life story of great tragedy sometimes, of great potential sometimes, perhaps lost potential due to substance abuse, for example. But the insights for the various disciplines and studies that one is subjected to in these advanced programs is indispensable in understanding and properly judging. And I shudder sometimes to think the absence of knowledge I had when I first came to the bench. Judge Larson, that's an extremely long answer, but thank you.
Thank you, Judge Spoo. Let me just mention something for people who don't know where Nevada is. It's the state where Las Vegas is, and Reno is the second largest city in Nevada. And I've had the pleasure of taking courses with Judge Spoo and Dr. Toby. We also have a judge from way across the country in the state of Pennsylvania. I understand we have Judge Domitrovich. Could you give us an example of how judicial education has enhanced your experience as a judge?
Hello, I'm recovering from a pollen allergy, so I'll be short and sweet. The bottom line is that I don't think people know the story of how I got to know President Joseph Crowley, who was the head of the UNR. And before he left, I went to him and tried to convince him to have a program, a dissertation PhD program for judges. And it was interesting. He kept on arguing, you know, we don't really need more judicial education. You have the master's program and everything. And I said, no. I said, you can leave a legacy for judges to have a PhD if you basically do this, because the UNR, the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, has the law school, and you would have the PhD program for judges. So you would even it out, so to speak. President Crowley, he did put the program through. I was the first to graduate from the UNR, and the day of my graduation, the president who was supposed to be on the dais wasn't able to do so. He was ill. So in comes President Crowley and he put he hooded me for the PhD program and said, we did it. So basically, when I was elected, my mantra was always, a judge is a teacher of the law as well as a student of the law. We teach people tough lessons in the courtroom. So we as judges have to be students of the law to know how to be a good teacher. So my experience with the UNR and the National Judicial College has made me the judge that I am. I've been a trial judge for over 32 years. I'm now senior status. I present for the American Bar Association, for the Pennsylvania Bar Association, and globally on artificial intelligence and other scientific evidence issues. Without the UNR and the National Judicial College, I would not be the judge that I am. And I thank everyone. Again, my allergies are really bad today. I apologize. And and I just wanted to add one more thing, that when I presented my PhD dissertation, I did it through the Law and Society in Humboldt, Germany, to the German judges that I had taught at the National Judicial College in Reno. They came out to Humboldt University to hear my speech, and I remember them pounding on the desk, which is how they applaud in Germany. And the German judges, who were my students, were active listeners on my dissertation, which was about court-appointed experts and how judges can learn more about science and other areas through court-appointed experts. I therefore learned firsthand by being a PhD student and graduate how to do scientific evidence. So if we're going to review scientific evidence, the best way to learn is to do it. And that's what we had to do for our PhD dissertation. So I thank everyone. Thank you, Judge.
Oh, thank you. All right, we have a little bit more time, so let me just fill in with a few more stories of examples of what people have been talking about. And Joyce Lingard talked about how judges sometimes don't like to realize they need training. So in my first position in California at the parole board, is an example of a system where all the judges needed training. And when I was hired there, I was hired to help institute reforms following the finding of a federal judge that the California correctional system was in violation of the constitutional due process rights of parolees. And I helped then to shorten the time that convicts were, he received hearings on parole, but it was too little too late. To put the problem in context, California has the highest prison population and rate of incarceration in the world. And only Texas, the state of Texas, has a higher prison population and rate of incarceration than California. And the parole system was and probably is still part of the problem. And as a result, they cut the number of parolees by over 2/3. And because basically the system was too biased and overly sentenced people to prison or put too many people in prison. So that reduced my work. So I was happy to transfer to another agency, the Department of Insurance. And the example, that was a position where I was lucky enough to then start going to the Judicial College, where I received the master's degree and published an article based on my thesis that you can find on the internet. And then it allowed me to be given more difficult assignments. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, I changed positions, and because of the training at the Judicial College, it was easier for me to change positions. and then to be assigned the difficult work where I am now at the Public Utilities Commission, where California is trying to lead the way in transitioning away from fossil fuels. And we are having lots of challenges in providing safe, reliable energy in an economic way. And you may hear about this in the news when you hear about fires in California. And in California, the judges at this Utilities Commission are playing a leading role in helping to create new rules and to adjudicate policy and rates. And in this position, I've become, as the last judge just mentioned, a teacher and helping to train my colleagues. And that's something that has really enhanced my career and basically extended my career in an enjoyable way, so that I now get to speak like I am now with all of you. And it's something that just could be the best part of my day. I'm going to have to get off the line now and continue with the rest of my work day. But one of the best part of it about it is being here with all of you. I think I can leave some time for any questions, but ultimately I think, well, one thing I can recommend is that in considering opportunities for judicial education, I would recommend that you try to find courses that fill gaps in your education and then ones that you'll enjoy. I started my first career was in engineering. And so for even to go into law school was a challenge. And I found that the judicial education helped fill gaps that initially were needed to become a better judge. And now I find it just basically makes it more enjoyable to be a judge. So with that, does anyone have any questions of this panel of graduates of the Judicial College? And Judge Toby, if you can help me monitor the chat, that would be helpful.
Yes, Ugo would be doing that.
Okay, thank you very much, George Lassen. I know the first question has been answered, but I would like to give an opportunity for any other judge on the panel. And I would like to repeat the question. It says, what roles and impact does judicial education have on engineering standards and practices? What roles and impact does judicial education have on engineering standards and practices?
I think I tried to answer that one earlier.
You did. So
yes.
yeah, you did.
Okay, so I understand that Sean Marsh has to go away. He's got some other person needs to attend to. So there's a question in the comment for him. Let me read it out. Yes, a question for Sean Marsh, and Joy Lenga. At the National Judicial Council, do you have a place for aspiring judges from outside the United States of America, and perhaps a scholarship opportunity for them?
Thank you. I'd be happy to address that.
Right.
So we have a new class at the Judicial College. I think this will be the third time we offer it, called the Judicial Academy, and it's for attorneys who are aspiring to be judges. So it's a 4.5-day course. It teaches judges some of the transition things that they'll need to know, and talks about how to be elected, how to be appointed. So it's a wonderful course, and it's part of our initiative to try to get some career data on the impact that education has on the life of a judge. So if we can get them before they're even on the bench, provide some education, provide them education as they're transitioning to the bench, all through their career, and then as they're leaving the bench, and then try to follow the careers of those judges, we think that we're going to be able to establish some data. that will be helpful in funding. So the short answer is, if you have Judge Toby on your side advocating for you to get a scholarship from the NJC, we will consider that very favorably. And we do have a limited number of positions available for international judges where we can provide tuition waivers. So I'll put my email address in the chat, and if anyone here is interested in pursuing that, they can reach out to me.
Thank you very much. That's really reassuring. So let me go on to the next question. Given the fact that you, the anchor of this program, is from Nigeria, what can your forum do to address the ethical lapses in the Nigerian courts, especially manned by high courts and below? There is a lot of judicial rascality and unquantifiable level of corruption in the system. How can your platform or forum address this numerous lacuna in the system? I think this question is directed at Judge Toby. You're on mute, ma'am. We can't hear you.
I have a thought about that, Judge Toby, if you want me to take that question.
Okay.
I think, corruption is something that happens in all countries, and there are ethical standards for lawyers and judges, and
hello.
And we can all learn from each other. And for example, in the United States, we have rules against speaking to other parties in the case. You are not allowed to engage in what's called ex parte conduct, and that means when you're handling a case on the bench, you are prohibited from speaking outside of the presence of the court with anybody who's a party in the case. And I think what you can get from judicial education is a better understanding of the standards that other countries use to reduce corruption.
Okay.
And there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge Ladd. Thank you, John Lasson. Do we have any more answers to this question?
I beg your pardon. I'd answer that question since it was directed at me, but I'd like all the panelists to have the chance to answer questions so that anyone who wants to leave, because they're very busy people, would go, and I won't have to hold them. So if you can go through all the other questions, please. And I think Sean has left already. Unfortunately, I would have wanted you to ask him his questions. You can ask all the other questions and I would answer mine at the end.
Dr. Ari Toby, or Ari as I know her, we've been through many classes together. If I could just say something here, is that
yes,
permissible? When I look upon the jobs that we do as judges and the educational factor mixed into our job, I think to myself, and I challenge other judges to think, what impact you could have on just one life, whether in the criminal field, it's a victim or a defendant, or perhaps in family law, either of the parties, or even in civil business disputes, where I practiced a great deal of. If the education that you acquire sociologically, economically, psychologically, across the spectrum adds just a wee bit of knowledge, and of course it adds a great deal of knowledge in your impact on those lives, and the multiplier effect of that impact, the exponential effect that your more sophisticated judging will have due to education, whether it's here in the United States and the Judicial Studies program or elsewhere, or just exposure in various seminars to your fellow judges, which is invaluable in itself, then the impact that you have can really never be measured. As I said, every life that appears before us is a story. And to the extent that your education adds, and adds ethically, I might add, to an answer to that previous question, then you can never measure the impact that you've had. And really, isn't that what it's all about? And before I sign off, I want to thank Dr. Ari Toby for this privilege. She's a great friend and a great colleague and a great scholar.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go to the next question.
Okay. And so the next question is quite similar. The Nigerian system has been bedeviled in recent times by the appointment of people who lack proper understanding of the elementary laws, appointment of greenhorn and freshers from school without prior experience in the case of magisterial appointments, favoritism or godfatherisms are the hallmark of appointments at the lower courts. What can you do to correct these anomalies?
My Lord Justice Abiru, I was hoping that my Lord Justice Abiru is still here. I really don't take for granted the fact that we are all very busy persons. A judge's life is not that easy, because when others think you are on vacation, you're not. A lot of judges travel with their files. So even if this is vacation season, judges are still very busy. So I don't know if Justice Abiru is there to take that question. If Justice Abiru is not there, I would, at this time, especially want to recognize and acknowledge a representation from the Lagos State Judiciary, my constituency. I see Honorable Justice Coker. If I don't call your name, it's because I don't see any name identifying you by your device. I see Honorable Justice Fabanwo. I see Honorable Justice Oyefeso. I see Your Honor Magistrate Ayeye. I see Your Honor Magistrate Botoku. I see Your Honor Magistrate Okri. I think Your Honor Magistrate Komolafe. Thank you all for supporting and for being part of this. So any one of you that would want to please answer this question, as the Chief Justice, Honorable Chief Justice Osirun has said, judicial education is not about just the school or the degree, it's also about experience. And I know that all of you have tremendous, commendable experience in this area. If anyone wants to answer the question, this webinar is all about participation, not just presenters. The presenters are there to stir us up, because we know a wealth of knowledge is out there as attendees. So we would like anyone who has an answer to that question or wants to contribute to it to please say something.
Good afternoon, Doctor. This is Justice Fabanwo.
Nice to see you, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Yes. This is a great forum. As I said, 2006, the magistrate in Lagos State went to Nevada all the way from Lagos for judicial education. And we want to thank God today. What we're seeing today is really fantastic. We have one of our own there, who is one of the first recipients of the doctorate award. Now, going back to the issue of corruption and the judiciary, we have mechanisms in place. We have the National Judicial Council responsible for looking into complaints about how justice is being administered. So that's a forum that the person who asks the question can perhaps refer to if he needs more clarification in that respect. Now, talk about education and how it helps corruption. I want to give an example. Now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, we were all at home. Everyone couldn't go out. So we had a lot of people stuck at home, couples stuck at home, and then we had a lot of domestic violence, if you can recall. And I recall that as soon as we had that, there were workshops and conferences going on at the National Judicial College. And I think I attended one on remote courts. I attended one on tribal remote courts and some other ones. And we kept the conversation going on as to how to administer justice at these times. And that helped me when in my state, the practice direction number 2 was signed by the Honorable Chief Judge in May 2022. I started sitting virtually, especially for the family courts, because I'm a general jurisdiction judge. So apart from family courts, I also do other things. I started sitting for that, and I found out that from all over the world, where you have Nigerians, they were signing in from Austria, from Canada, from the US, from the UK, and were able to render service. Now, how do I link this to corruption? Before that time, before the pandemic, we used to have impersonators in the court. They will pretend to be the petitioners because the real petitioners are outside the country. So they will come in and they will pretend and they will get sworn in until we started getting them and reporting them, charging them for this. And then they will confess that, well, the petitioner is abroad, so they've come to stand in and to pretend. But because of the bit of judicial education and the interactions I had online with other judges, with all these virtual courts and everything, I was able to, I think I must have had about 200 sittings from conceptions, from commencement, leading to judgments of cases involving custodial orders, involving matrimonial offenses, involving domestic violence. And the little bit of education I received sort of spurred me on. Even at that time, we were still having debates as to whether the virtual courts were constitutional or not. But that spurred me on, and it helped me at that time to give justice. So I'm now relating the fact that people who would ordinarily impersonate did not have to impersonate because they had the opportunity to appear online from anywhere in the world to get justice. And so judicial education is always, it's very good. I'm interested, especially in the course on family and juvenile justice. I've done something before on drug. I believe one of the courses on drug had to do with drug offenders a while back, and that really helped me to understand the psyche of the offenders and why they keep going back to it. So I think that there is a lot to gain from judicial education, and I have benefited a lot, even from the free courses and the interactions and conversations going on at the National Judicial College.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my lord, my lady. Ugo, can you go on with the next question? Ugo, can you go on with the next question, please? Ugo, ask the question
apologies.
again.
I didn't know that I was on mute.
Repeat the question, please.
All
Ugo,
right, let me repeat the question.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, given the fact, okay, that was the first one about you being a Nigerian, and then how does a forum plan to
the question that
that
Honorable Justice Fabanwe answered, the question
yes.
Yes, please.
And so the question, so the Nigerian system has been bedeviled in recent times by the appointment of people who lack proper understanding of the elementary laws, appointment of greenhorns and freshers from school without proper experience in the case of magisterial appointments, favoritism, or godfatherism are the hallmarks of appointments at the lower courts. What can you do to correct these anomalies?
While I would still give opportunity again, if there's any other person who would like to answer the question, I would want to ask Judge Dimitrovic if you have something to say.
Again, my throat, I'm so sorry. I hope you can hear me. The bottom line is that that's what judicial education is all about, to teach people who are appointed or elected to the position of judge as to their role as a judge. I remember I was so thirsty for knowledge that I would go to almost attended every course at the National Judicial College in UNR in order to graduate with 2 master's degrees and a PhD. So every time I would go to class and then I'm ready to go back to Erie, Pennsylvania, I say to myself, when will I ever use this knowledge? I've never seen a case like this that would apply in this type of situation. I mean, it could be on housing, it could be family law, whatever it was. And so as soon as I took the bench, when I came back home from judicial training, I had a case in that field. It was weird. And then I would say, okay, I know how to deal with that because I just had training in that field. I also want to put a plug in for in-person judicial education too. I know how important it is in these days, when you're under the weather, to really have Zoom as a replacement, but I don't think there's any replacement for in-person judicial education, because not only do you learn about the law, you learn from others who are in the same situation as you are. And so if there are appointed judicial individuals who feel like they're out of water, so to speak, that they don't know what they're doing, join the crowd, because we're all learning together. You network, you learn from great people like Dr. Judge Airy as to what it is to be a judge. We're all in the same situation, but we need to learn. And again, judges are teachers of the law as well as students of the law. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also hoping that someone else from Nigeria would be able to answer this question, but I wanted an international perspective. Now, so one of the issues that we are facing, and I think it's not just for Nigeria, is issues of qualification and what are the criteria. So a lot of times when you do not have a system that is transparent, it can affect the appointments, promotion, and the development of a community. So in what respect do you have, say, a judge or somebody who has been appointed who has been sworn in as a judge, saying that the person is not qualified? Now, a lot of times, and part of the dilemma that I think that judges have is where society doesn't understand what judges do. Society does not understand what it means to be a judge. And so when you appoint and employ, they say, oh, this person is based on this and that. However, I understand definitely, because of the culture of where I'm from, where we are from, that a lot of appointments is based on, some appointments is based on who knows who. That does not mean that the judges or the people that are being appointed don't understand the law, don't know the law. I did say at the last session, the second webinar that we had, that a lot of times people who, I empathize with offsprings of judges and justices, because a lot of times everyone would say, oh, it's because it's this judge's child or this judge that person got the appointment. Sometimes it may not be so. Sometimes it may be on merit. However, for those ones who the employment is based on who knows who and they don't know the law, like Judge Dimitrovic has said, that is why we have judicial training. Now, you have a lot of facilities, the NJI, there are facilities presently going on, resources, I beg your pardon, going on right now for judges and magistrates. It's better than before. Though we are still working on something, and the ATSJC is working on something where we would have opportunities for judges, Nigerian judges, African judges, to interact with foreign judges and have opportunities to sponsor programs and have judges travel to have judicial training. We have proposals pending on that in diverse areas. Where a judge is sworn in or appointed because he or she knows someone, it wouldn't take time for that person's, with all due respect, ignorance to be out there. And if that happens, it is left for the Bar Association and the judiciary to follow, to take the next step necessary. There are avenues for disciplining and giving such persons a break. And I know this is not something that is done in the Nigerian system, but I can actually, see a situation where the NJC, JSC would say, take a break. It's not like a suspension, but take a break. Take a break from the bench. Take a break and go and do some learning. Take a break and go and learn what it means to be a judge at your own expense, especially if the individual or individuals, a group of persons have come in through who knows who. And of course, realistically, because I'm not in limbo, the fact that I'm here in the United States of America doesn't mean I've forgotten home and culture and some realities on ground. You may still need to answer to the who's that they know, to say, okay, you can't give this person a suspension, you can't tell this person to go and take a break because it doesn't tell well on me. I make sure that they get the job and all of that. It's affecting the system, and this is a necessary, it is an unfortunate evil that we have to face. However, I would call on, and encourage, though it's a dilemma, head judges, known as head judges, but chief judges in various states, where such situations happen, it is important that chief judges would keep, administrative judges would keep documents. Let us try to document as much as is necessary for such appointees, because when eventually they show themselves, as they will eventually, it will not be a thing of, oh, you are discriminating against me, oh, you hate me, oh, because I didn't want to do this with you, and that. There will be proof and evidence before the commission, before the disciplinary bodies, before the body of SANs, the NBAs, that this person has indeed deserves this kind of consequence face. But when we are not clear and transparent in our disciplinary measures, we're not transparent on the criteria we use, a lot of times it would open doors for all or sundry. And this is not something that will go away anytime soon. We would always have that issue of favoritism, who knows who, and appointments coming. However, if they come in and they are smart enough to realize that we are faced with a different situation here, everybody's looking at us, we have to sit up. Then what they can do is take the judicial education that Judge Demetrovich talked about. Judicial education, like the Honorable Chief Justice has said, is a continual thing. And I will just take this and give an example. Justice Abiru is not here. I don't know if other of his team is here, but I beg the pardon of Justice Oyebanji, Justice Adesanya, Justice Abiru, and others. There were 9 of them. There were 9 of them. I don't know what they used to call them. Milady, Justice Fabanwo would remember. They were sworn in. All 9 of them were sworn in from the bank, from lecturing, from different areas that quite a number of people in Lagos State judiciary were upset with it. The society was, some people in the public were upset. They were writing and saying all sorts of things about these judges, these newly sworn in judges, and oh, they brought people from the bank. They brought people because their husbands are so highly placed, because their husbands are senior lawyers and all of that. And they criticized these 9 judges that included the Justice Abiru that you heard today talking. Do you know what the history of Lagos State? It's not been that 9 judges as it came and they blew everybody's minds. Their judgments were on point. They were sitting on time. Majority of them maintained that record. As Justice Abiru went to the Court of Appeal, and so it's and if you read their judgment, you know that it's not just oh, they just came from the bank. You would see that they were grounded lawyers. These 9 that were, Justice Abiru said, they were appointed at the same time. They were criticized, very criticized, but they came and they blew everybody's mind. They knew their law and they consistently developed. Their expertise of evidence was amazing. So I would believe that that would be something for a lot of people to say, okay, if I am appointed and I'm not doing what I should do, then I should go take training. And if you can't help the situation because they're frustrating your judiciary as a chief judge who has to answer to the governor with all due respect and to answer to all other political heads, then you will just, like I said, keep your records, and eventually they would show themselves, and you would have to do the right thing by asking them to step down, take a leave, and go for judicial education at their expense. And there are many people out there who are qualified to do the job. I don't know if that answers the question. Whoever asked that question, because unfortunately we don't have the right answer for that question. It's something that is a social vice that would go on for a while. And this would probably take me to my next, to the question that I was asked directly, that as a Nigerian, what is my plan on corruption? Now, these webinars and symposiums, we started last year, and the aim ultimately is the role of judges, courts in society, in developing law and society. So a part of it, definitely, corruption is one terrible vice that is affecting judicial development. And so for the next couple of years, I have outlined the specific topics that I will be presenting, or that presenters would be, that I would be anchoring in hosting and theming in our webinars and symposiums. And corruption is one of such, but I did not set it up because of how controversial it can be and how very tedious the discussion can be international. So that is set part for next year. I deliberately decided to leave it for next year after the corruptions, because we definitely will be having a lot of election petition. I have a hand up, please. Ugo, there's a hand up for questions before I continue.
Yes, that's the person who asked the question you just answered, and is asking to be heard. Yes, it's asking if he wishes to speak to the House briefly on the issue raised.
Yes, please.
His name is Abdul Kadir. Can we hear you, Abdul Kadir?
And we have another hand up. So check, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Abdul Kadir Sani. As you have seen it, I'm speaking from Kano.
Are you a lawyer or a magistrate or a judge, please?
I am a legal practitioner of about 24 years standing.
Thank you, sir.
Let me say this. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you for the program. First of all, you see, what has just raised is something that I have a personal knowledge of. And this thing, has sent me into so much bitterness about a system, a profession that I dream of, and things are getting out of hand. Let me tell you that when you were responding, I was just saying, well, she is trying to respond to the issue. But the truth of the matter is, the appointment that I spoke about is the type of appointment where definitely that people are not in touch with elementary laws. And then it is that bad that the issue of fatherism, or let me say godfatherism, in practice between judges is such that even to your knowledge, you see the other side of the party speaking with a judge that is to preside over your matter. And then thirdly, you find it so deteriorating that the kind of magistrate we have here in Kano, some of them cannot even handle their own ruling. They don't understand the elementary, procedure about FIR, First Information Report, when it is brought. Some of them even throw it into their bags, hoping to study it before they attend to, the suspect or defendant who has been brought to court, who is languishing in his cell. The situation here is so pathetic. My people here are so afraid they cannot raise it. And I said, look, if you don't raise this thing, your fear will bury you. It is one thing, either be on the right side or you're on the left side. And I want to tell you, the bars we have 2 branches in Kano, they are complacent because a number of them look up to the government for appointments. So I can tell you that the situation is far. In fact, I wish Justice Abiru is here to listen to this, because I remember he was part of the justice we once had in Court of Appeal Kano. We need an immediate, that was why I asked the question, what can your platform do? Because as an individual, you cannot bring this to a halt. You need a body, probably independent body, that can push in and see how they can right this wrong. People are not talking, and a lot of litigants are paying a very dear price. I have handled matters where at the end of it, you begin to ask, is this the law that we have actually studied where all the nitty-gritties were taught in school? I wouldn't want to take much of our time, but I'm telling you, independent bodies like you out there needed, to find a way that you can intercede in the kind of things that are happening. It is possible. I want to give it to Lagos. Lagos, I attended a conference recently, 2022. Lagos is doing great. I have had to do cases in Lagos. You find that everything is working almost perfectly. So when you spoke about Lagos, I knew what operates in Lagos. But in Kano, I am telling you, we're still far way down, and I think more needed to be done. We need to have bodies different from governmental bodies, different from individuals who should speak on how to redress this issue. It's fast burning out the practice. Thank you very much for having me. Once again, my name is Abdulkadir Sani. I'm speaking from Kano. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I definitely understand what you're saying, and it's not just a Kano situation. I don't know if Barrister Adebayo is here. Adebayo Akinlade. Well, Adebayo Akinlade is convening, and he's basically has been anchoring programs on corruption in the judiciary, and he has done several trainings on that. And he was one of our supporters of A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting, and is one of partners in collaborating in this respect. So we have spoken about it when we had our first, the Honorable Justice Nkitobi Binal Symposium in NGI last year, December 2nd, where we talked about the impact of judges, of Honorable Justice Nkitobi in developing law and society. And we did mention something on that sort, and we're working on getting there. But one of the articles that I'm trying to look at my phone to find out, one of the articles that he recently posted, Bayo Akinlade, was on the issue of corruption. And on several counts, he has asked the question on how did NBA miss this? Why wasn't LPDC alerted? Issues of corruption, that was about a lawyer recently. And he did talk about how Lagos judicial officials export. I can't get the specific blog or posting that he had, but we, A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting, is working, or we are trying to work with Bayo and some other organizations to see how we would talk about the issues of corruption. It's a very big situation that we have to sit down and really think about what the outcome would be, because it's like taking the big problem of Nigeria in one day. It's a foundational issue. It's a Nigerian issue, not just a Nigerian issue, it's a cultural issue, because when we talk about culture, you have to greet, several people. I remember when I came to the Judicial College, there was a lot of issues. Oh, why are you being so respectful in this way? It's cultural. So when you have somebody say, oh, I came from the Oba of Lagos, or I came from the Sultan, I came from the Suki, you cannot say no. So how do we get judicial training or judicial education to our chief judges, admin judges, to help to see how they can stand their ground and say, no, this is what we want. We cannot afford to bring people who are not qualified into our judiciary. If we do, we are going to be in trouble. So can somebody please, help in a way where we would all be clear? So that would be one of the situations. I would be working with the NGI, like thankfully, since I am consulting with them, we have fashioned courses that would take that into consideration, but it is something that is very important that we need to go down to devote a whole symposium to corruption. So that I intend to do after the symposium next year, because my late father was indeed someone who could not stand corruption, even though a lot of people, Sahara reporters indeed, said once that he was corrupt. And that is part of the things that we're talking about, that sometimes some judges are not, and they give the impression that they are because they don't understand what judges do. So we're dedicating maybe 2029, if God tarries and we are all alive then, to corruption in the judiciary and its impacts. Thank you. So we have, I beg your pardon, Mr. Nimi Walsinjak wants to make his contribution.
Very much. Good evening and good afternoon, depending on which I'm a lawyer, and I visited the Judicial College in Nevada. I think that was 1996, and became part of those who sold the idea of a institution here in Nigeria. So we're happy that the NGI eventually came up in Nigeria, and I'm happy to see that we are collaborating in progress. Just a brief one about judicial education. The focus right now in Nigeria appears to be only for the appointed judges. You don't need to know how to judge. Just appoint, and then we will train you in some 3-day seminars. But I think that we need to change the narrative. We need to prepare people for the bench. And so we need to have trainings on even before you become a judge. So whether you are a practicing lawyer or you are a magistrate, if you ever hope to get to the higher bench, there will be nothing wrong in taking courses and training in how to judge. Now, this was the approach we adopted when we did not have judicial journalists. There was a time when the only lawyers working in the media were legal advice companies such as this. And it took a while for us to train lawyers to know how to write like journalists. And today, the space is full of it, even the social media. So that's one suggestion I'll put forward to those in the institute and the colleges to consider training for lawyers and long before they get to the High Court bench. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Actually, was it no, it was the year 2000 actually that I sent, no, it was 2001. I sent a proposal to the Nigerian Law School proposing a course on judicial education. So we had A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting has a proposal before the Nigerian Law School on introducing judicial education headlong in the law school. And we're hoping that that would be approved or considered. And there are some courses at the last webinar that we talked about in the NGI, and presently the Curriculum Development Committee is considering that as well. And also talking with the National Judicial College on sponsoring or making availability for international judges in their judicial academy. They have a fantastic judicial academy program, which we hope to adopt for the Nigerian judiciary. Thank you. So we have Milady Justice Oyefeso.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the privilege to contribute to this all-important discourse. First of all, I just wanted to correct something you said. There were 26 millennium judges that came in at the same time with Justice Abiru, not 9. 26 of us.
Okay, thank you, man. Thank you. I
Mm.
think it was the
And
9 sitting on time that they called you Niners or something. That was what.
Okay, yes. And I'm aware that in Lagos State, the procedure for appointment of magistrates and judges is quite rigorous. I know that candidates have to sit exams, and from the exams, they are shortlisted for interview, and then they must pass the interviews, and then they, the appointments are, if they're for judges, judicial officers, they're defended at the NJC. So, and then again, when we came in 2001, the Millennium Judges, we didn't just start sitting immediately. We had to go through rigorous training, even after we were appointed for about almost, we were appointed in May. We didn't start sitting until October. And throughout that time, we were attending a series of seminars, trainings, both in Lagos and in Abuja. So I know that it boils down to training. We must keep up the training. We can't afford to appoint judicial officers and then throw them in at the deep end. They must be trained. They're coming from a totally different background. And so they need to know how to maneuver as judicial officers. So I think it's important to train and train rigorously. Also in Lagos State now, there's no, apart from the training, you also have appointees, judicial officers that have been appointed, sit with serving judges. So it's like an internship. They see it practically. They sit with the judge. They don't contribute in the sittings, but they watch and they learn by observation. So it's not just the trainings, it's also the internship that goes on. And I also wanted to mention the fact that you were talking about the law school. I am aware that in South Korea, because we went on a visit to South Korea at some point I believe in 2014, their law school has different streams. So if you want to be a defense lawyer, you have your own stream. If you want to be a prosecutor, you have your own stream. If you want to be a judicial officer, you also have your own stream. So they were like, you come into the law school, all of you together, and then you specialize in any of these disciplines. I don't know if it's something that we can look at. I don't know how it will work in Nigeria. It's just a suggestion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, milady. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So we have just a couple of minutes to round up. I would just quickly review everyone's key comments that everyone has made. I want to thank, in absentia, the Honorable Chief Justice of Sierra Leone for such a remarkable greeting and remark, opening us with his insightful comments about the Sierra Leone judiciary and how they are interested in partnering with us for judicial education. And it's interesting how he said that Sierra Leone judiciary has impacted change in such a way with sexual violence offenses, and that has gone the great way to say how judicial education has helped them. Every 5 years, they are into dynamic education for their judges, and how he has emphasized the importance of judges in creating social change. I also appreciate Justice Abiru for talking about his role in, or his passion for judicial education, and how much he has been training judges, and how such impact has affected society in various respects. And I think I skipped Sean, having trained over 200 judges, and how he's eager and looking forward to partnering with more. Specifically, he said his desire is to serve the judicial global community. What A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting is doing is to raise that platform where we have a global network, where this is what we're doing. Somebody just sent me a chat and said they want to get in touch with one of the judges on something, and protocol, judicial ethics and protocol, you would have to take permission. I know this is an intellectual forum, but we also have to take, so I have asked the person, send me your email and details and I'll get in touch with the judge. And if the judge would want to send you any details on research, he or she will do so. However, I would let you know that from our training, judges are not really open to doing that because they don't know who you are and what your intentions are. So I would give anyone who wants to get in touch with the judge, I would not give you any details, but I would send you to the judge's secretary or clerk. And so this is what this is about, networking. Somebody's working on a PhD dissertation, and one of the comments of one of the judges here has interested him or her, and the person has reached out to me and say, please, can I get in touch with this judge? So please, anybody who wants to do that, you have our details, A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting details to send us emails. Send us emails and would let you know how you get in touch with the judge or with the person you want to contact, though not directly. I will not give out any detail of any judge or email, any court address or anything. The least I would do would give you a contact of the registrar, but with the permission of the judge. So Professor Dr. Marsh did say being a judge sometimes can be lonely. And the fact that he mentioned that, you see that one of the issues about judicial education that is important is taking away the stress from the judge. And we thank Joy Linger for talking about their extensive program. And we're hoping to partner with the NJC to see how the Judicial Academy can be helpful to judges in Nigeria. And when she said something about community, that judges should be involved in their community and teach civic rights, one of the things that we did recently with a judge in the United States of America, a judge of the Supreme Court of New York, Judge Burns, A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting has a community platform where we teach children about their roles in society. And it's a unique program called Social Studies in the Park. And that Judge Brian Burns of the New York Supreme Court, 6th Judicial District, I think 3rd Judicial District, he gave a presentation to the children to talk about their role and how law impacts their role and their decisions and choices in life. So part of this role of the judge, or part of the impact of judicial education, is to expand our knowledge and see how useful we are as judges, or you are as judges, in impacting social change. And I'm grateful to the National Judicial Institute Administrator, who has sent his representative to talk about the history of judicial education in Nigeria and how fantastic they are doing. They were also busy, all directors, they are all busy trying to put stuff together for the next session of judicial education and training for judges. And I thank Judge Spoo, fantastic comment about what his interaction with his registrar or court clerk. Every single person we see is a story, a life story of, the great story, and it's an insight for judges to be able to use that as a platform. His comments are something that we should all really think about. Very, very important. And I did not know that Judge Demetrovich initiated the PhD program. I just knew that she was the first woman to have a PhD in judicial studies. I didn't know that she played such a major role. Thank you for setting the pace for us, Judge Demetrovich, and your input and emphasis at the second webinar that we had in July about the importance and indispensability of judicial education in developing the judiciary. I also want to thank Judge Larson for sharing that occasion, and giving us his personal view about the importance of judicial education. So A.T.Socio-Judicial Consulting is, as I've said, through our unique concept of tenacious research, we get involved in arguments, debates, presentations that would help our judicial system and justice system in diverse ways to celebrate the jurisprudence of our judges, that not all judges are corrupt. And even when they see that there's a lot happening with the judiciary, especially the judiciary in Africa, where they say, oh, there's a lot of corruption, we should celebrate them because it's difficult. Not every developed country would face the kind of lack and unappreciation that we face in judiciary Africa, and would give the kind of input and intellectual knowledge as judges and magistrates are doing in many countries in Africa. So this is our mantra, to build and rebuild public confidence in our court systems in whichever way we will. And I thank very much Learned Counsel for your comments on corruption. I definitely would take that seriously as we listen to the recording, which will be available to you as soon as we finish editing. You can go on the website and check for our first, second webinars, as this third one will be available within the next couple of weeks, or as soon as we get that available. So I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. I do not know how to say thank you because a lot of you are very busy. Taking 1 minute of your time is very, very impactful. So our next court and the last Courts on Society webinar series would be holding same time. A lot of people did not connect, even though we had over 60 register, because they're asking me for the link, and the link is always on the announcement or the registration link for you to join the Zoom. So same time, 8:30 Eastern time, 1:30 Nigerian time, 1:30 Irish time, and every other time zone that we started with today. And the topic would be the court's role in advancing human rights in diversified society. Our keynote speaker would be the Honorable Justice Helen Ogunwumiju, Justice of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Discussants would be Justice Teresa Doherty, who is a judge in Ireland, but is sitting as a residual special court judge of Sierra Leone. She will be tuning in from Ireland. We have the learned senior advocate, Learned Femi Falana, SAN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, human rights activist. He will be presenting. And we have a magistrate, Safia Ashipu of the Cross River State Judiciary. These are our discussants for our next session, and our time is 11:30, right on time for the end of our presentation. Thank you, and thank you all for attending. I'll see you all, by God's grace, on the 1st of December.